academician, an adventurer, a student leader, an aviator, a record holder. Sri Rudy began his career as student leader in Punjab University. In 1990, he became the youngest member of Bihar Legislative Assembly at age 27. In 1996, he became the Member of Parliament and joined Lok Sabha from Chhapra, Bihar, and was re-elected in year 1999 to serve the people yet once again. He served as a Minister of the State for Commerce, Trade and Industry, and subsequently became the Civil Aviation Minister.
इस देश में प्रतिस्पर्धा होना चाहिए और लोगों के पास अपॉर्चुनिटी होना चाहिए कि और भी विमान कंपनियां इस देश में आ सकें।
So very good afternoon to all of you, ladies, gentlemen, distinguished guests, and a very special thanks to Aero Club of India and to Sakthi Aircraft Industry for arranging this wonderful session all day today. The more you know about Sri Rajiv Pratap Rudy, the less it is, Many of you may not even know that when he finished his flying and came and joined IndiGo, I used to be based in Chennai, and this was a long time back. And I was asked to come to Delhi, and I asked them, what is this? He said, no, pack your bag and come here. You have to stay here for a very, very long period because you're going to do training for him. So I was his first instructor on the Airbus 320, and it was remarkable flying with him, Obviously, he's a great orator, so he always wanted to make a couple of speeches, a little bit of public address and all that. But I think slowly down the line, we had to control him a little bit, but he did a phenomenal job. He would mix his work. He took so much of interest in his work and things like that, and it was just phenomenal. So wonderful, lovely having you all here. And I think the toughest part is if you have a session after lunch. So guys, I request all of you to keep awake, and I'm also trying to do my best to keep awake. So we're going to talk a little bit about, as an airline perspective, we've been talking so much about growth since morning that I think it's ingrained in all of you that where the airline industry is going to go. So I'll just give you a little perspective that, and you heard this from the Honorable Minister also, that the world's third largest domestic aviation market is going to be India, which is just remarkable. Take an airline like IndiGo itself. We have 91 domestic stations where we operate. I could never imagine, I've got about 4.5 decades of aviation experience. Almost 48 years when I stepped into an aeroplane first time. And, I could never imagine that, we could have 91 destinations here. How many of you can recall way back in 2005 when the 100 aeroplane order was placed? The first question that used to be asked is, in jahajo ko park kahan karoge? Today, IndiGo itself has 400 odd aeroplanes parked everywhere across the country, and other airlines in the country also have them parked. India as a nation, I think the spending power is phenomenal. The middle income group is doing very well, and there's a lot of disposable income, and I think the appetite for aviation and for travel is going to be great. But what I'm trying to stress over here is aviation is going to grow, but as aviators, what can we do? I think we can give a platform for many of them who would want to choose aviation as a career. There's a good old saying that in this flying fraternity, you need to be at the right place at the right time. Gentlemen, so I know, I thought maybe it is by design, but I think it was just a flaw, that's it. So being at the right time, right place at the right time, what could be a better time than this if somebody wants to take this as a career? We've got lots of FTOs over here. I think this is a message that you need to go speak to everyone out there that this is the best time. And of course, whatever is being done between Aero Club and Sakthi is to cater to the rising demand of many FTOs and ATOs who would want to enter the market. Let's talk a little bit about the aircraft and the pilot demand forecast. You heard the Honorable Minister just mentioning 30,000 figure. I was there with him 2 weeks back or a week and a half back, and he mentioned the figure of 20,000 pilots in the next 5 years. And Air India itself has given a statement that they need 6,500 pilots and 470 aeroplanes, and that's what the report says. The demand is a global demand. In IndiGo, we have plans to double by this end of this decade. In other words, what took us 19 years or 18 years to do, we have to do it in the next 6 years. So we have 5,500 pilots, 5,300 pilots as I talk to you. So we're going to be double the number of pilots by the end of the decade. That's by 2030. What could be a better place to be at the right time here? All over the world, they're talking about, a global pilot shortage with figures, coming close to about 60,000. The aircraft demand itself is going to be approximately 2,200 aeroplanes in the next 20 years in India. We've got some figures here of 2023, when India actually started coming on the global stage here. The aircrafts that were ordered in 2023 were a total of 3,850 aeroplanes. The rest of the world, the share in the pie was 2,700, but India itself is 1,155 aeroplanes that were ordered. So in other words, 30% of the market share of the orders were in a country like India. So we're going to add another 1,500 by 2035. And as of 2024, as I talk to you today, there are 1,900 aeroplanes which are yet to come into India. And the share of IndiGo itself is close to about 970. A little bit of story of IndiGo again over here. In the year 2016, when we got the first aircraft, I think the world didn't believe that we were serious in business. We had ordered 100 aeroplanes. The largest order that I can ever think of being in the, I was in the legacy carrier, I used to fly for Indian Airlines. The largest order that I had ever heard those days were 30 aeroplanes. IndiGo ordered 100 aeroplanes in 2005. And I want to congratulate Aero Club of India and Diamond that they've ordered today actually 200 aeroplanes. I think that needs a loud applause from everyone. So Rajiv ji, you've broken the IndiGo record of 100 aeroplanes and you all have gone ahead and ordered 200 aeroplanes. So kudos to all of you. So from 2006 to 2010, we got delivery of 34 aeroplanes. And it took us approximately 9 years to get the 100 aeroplanes, which was almost one aeroplane every month. Today, as I talk to you, we take deliveries of 5 aeroplanes every month approximately. 2025 forecast for this year, we're going to be 400 plus aeroplanes. We're going to add the XLR, which is going to be a little more range than the 321 that we fly. And somewhere in 2027 is the induction of the wide-body aircrafts, and the figures are going to go much, much higher then. So if you look at in totality, the total number of aeroplanes that have yet to be delivered is 970 aircrafts yet to be delivered. And I think this itself gives you a great feeling of an extent of the volume of share that is there for India. And I think more for FTOs to carry a story down and tell that everybody over here who has a passion to fly can actually be a pilot. It's not just about flying. We managed to get this thing, figures in terms of what sort of an employment this can generate. So if you look at 2024, there'll be the strength is 18,300. And as the years pass by, the total number of flight crew, cabin crew, and maintenance crew induction by 2035 is going to be 35,000. So it is not only going to create job opportunities for, just for pilots, but I think it's for cabin crew, and it is also for the maintenance engineers and for technicians. I know there are lots of challenges that are faced by the FTOs. pilot sourcing and ensuring that they are airline ready. So this is one of the biggest things, you know, you can train someone to get a commercial pilot license, but have you trained that person to be fit to join an airline? And this is my request to all the FTOs, that I think you need to move your vision from just training a CPL holder to make somebody absolutely ready and match with a global footprint and make them airline ready from day one. You know, there are different generations of aeroplane which you will see, and I think I would say that Diamond aircraft, with all the modern avionics and the modern concept that it has about flying, is a right aircraft to fit in the fourth generation aircraft. What is very important is what I'm going to talk about is the training methodology and the training curriculum. You know, there has been a paradigm shift in how training is seen today. There was a time when we were flying, when we were learning to fly, everything was just skill-based. You had to do a right maneuver, you had to do it the right way, and you were absolutely okay, and you got certified as a pilot. Today, it is all being changed. There is a concept of competency-based training. And my request to all the FTOs is that please do some work at the background, and we have to create competent pilots, just not a CPL holder. So competency-based is something that is the future. Aeroplanes are coming with a lot of modernization. No aeroplane is going to fall off the sky, you know, if there was a little lack in skill. But what is really required is that every pilot needs to be trained with keeping the competencies in mind. So I think this will be a great, if FTOs want to work with an airline like IndiGo, or maybe I'm sure with Air India also, the partnership has to be collaborating in the right direction. And I would say that competency-based training is the bottom line. Every pilot needs to be trained and has to have the right competency. And I'll tell you the reason why. A Diamond is a single pilot operation. You agree? So for 200 hours, you're learning to fly an aeroplane where something went wrong, you took the decision and you executed the decision. When you're going to come to an airline and you're going to fly, it's not a one-man job. The two pilots are going to fly it. You have to have the competency of task sharing. You have to have the competency of advocacy. You have to have the competency of workload management. So it is very well defined in the airline, and I request each and every FTO, and I'm sure Aero Club of India is going to play a very, very major role in it, because Rajiv ji did mention about a common portal. And I think this common portal will keep all this in mind and see that how every FTO is advancing towards competency-based training. You know, easy said than done. I think training standards really need to be standardized. Whether you're coming out from FTO 1 or FTO 9 or FTO 14 or FTO 39, every student who comes out from there, I think you have to have the same adaptation of global practices and have the same benchmark. So I think each one of you will have to curate your training program accordingly, meeting the world's best standard. We have to be a global player. Our Honorable Minister mentioned over there that we want students to come from everywhere in the world, come and train here, and why not? What could be a better chance and a better occasion than this? But for that, we have to rise and we have to shine. We have to go way beyond just running an FTO and just creating a CPL license. We have to embed the competencies in every form of training, everywhere. Very interesting. That's how the world looks. And let's see where we stand today. US has a population of 341 million, and look at the number of flying schools it has. 1,245. Unbelievable. Every 20 miles, I've done my flying in the US way back in the late 70s, early 80s. I could, you know, every 20 miles I could go and change my school if I was not happy with one. I could move in the Bay Area. They had hundreds of schools over there. I could move on. It has 1,245 with a population of 341. Look at Europe today. It has doubled the population of the United States, 742 million, and it has 1/4 the number of flying schools, 321. I would still say that it is underpenetrated compared to the United States. A lot can be done in Europe too. And let's see where we stand. We are 1,430 million, the largest population in the world, overtaking China, 1.4 billion and growing. And look at it, we have 39 flying schools. So guys, I think look at the potential, look at the opportunity, what all can be done. But to make the best of that opportunity, again and again I'm saying that we need to maintain the global standards, and we could create, I think, 10 times 390 schools. 390 schools is nothing, it's just, you need to, it's 10 times, and that's the potential in this country. I don't know how many of you have seen these cockpits before. Maybe a couple of them who are as old as I am. I didn't see the first one. It was before I was born. But I had the privilege of flying the second generation here. I used to fly the Airbus 300 as a flight engineer, so I had the chance. You know, when I flew that aircraft way back in 1977, 78, I thought that this was the most modern aeroplane that mankind could ever create. I walked into the cockpit, and those of you who fly the 321 today, it had alpha floor. It didn't have auto thrust, but it had auto throttle. It had auto land capabilities. It could do a Cat 3 landing. It had everything. And I thought, this is the future. It just took me 7 years after that to walk into a fly-by-wire 4th generation cockpit, and the world had changed. The world had changed in the sense that the cockpit was not the same. And that is where I was talking about competencies. That is where the question came, that do you need that much of skill to fly this aeroplane? And I think the answer was no. There was so much of automation. How many of you can remember when we started flying way back, 40 years back, the captain used to be called the pilot, and the co-pilot, and the first officer used to be called the co-pilot. You can remember? Then came a time that, okay, no, we need to change it. So we said, okay, the guy on the left is going to be called captain, the right on the side is going to be called a first officer. I think the world was confused. Then came a generation where, you know, with all this automation, they said no. And Airbus was the first one, or they said no, now we have cockpit managers. We don't need that much of skill to fly an aeroplane. So the captain was called the CM1, the co-pilot was called the CM2, and I used to be a flight engineer, I used to be called the CM3. That means we were cockpit managers. Cockpit manager 1, cockpit manager 2, and then the world moved and we came to the 4th generation aircraft. And then Airbus said no. We need to redefine this, and they said that we'll call this pilot flying and pilot non-flying. Can you guys remember? Many of you are there. PF and PNF. Suddenly the world woke up after there were a couple of accidents. What is this guy doing here? He's called pilot non-flying, not flying. So that means the aircraft is just being flown by one guy. So they said, no, we need to change that. And today, in the world that we fly, they're called pilot flying and they're called pilot monitoring. And when I talk about pilot monitoring, I'm talking about the importance of pilot monitoring, and I again come back to competency-based training. That is the thing. And I think with an aircraft like Diamond, like I told you, it's a 4th generation aeroplane. It bridges the gap between those days flying, yesteryear flying, compared to what the flying an airline pilot is going to do. Okay, so I think a lot has been spoken about it. I've just put a few points over here. It is the ecosystem in India is going to be strengthened by having this Diamond DA40, which is a game changer. It's going to bring cost efficiency, environmental sustainability. Today, everything centers around sustainability. You can do wonders, but everybody asks, the question turns around, is it sustainable or not sustainable? So I think environmentally sustainable, because I saw some figures over there which were how much of US gallons you burn with every hour of flying, and that itself defines that how sustainable this aircraft could be. I spoke about something which is, I think, very close to Rajiv ji's heart, and that is skilled workforce development. I shared a slide specially made over there that it is just not creating jobs for pilots, but it's creating jobs. India will be creating jobs for pilots, for cabin attendants, and for maintenance staff. And of course, what this is going to do is going to give a big boost to flying training and to general aviation. And I think a lot has been spoken about it by the Honorable Minister, by Shri Rajiv Pratap Rudy also on the same elements. Again, back to sustainability. So pilot training, we have to expand our academies and improve training programs. Again, I'm coming back to global best practices. We will walk every two steps that we take. We will try to press on the regulator that they need to walk one step ahead with us. And this is something which is the vision of our Civil Aviation Minister today. Make in India training aircraft, which I think is going to expand the horizon. And I did mention about the regulatory framework, which needs to be worked. Back to, again, what I was spoken about, traditional does not work anymore. There has to be a move. We have to adapt, we have to evolve. Strengthening training, collaborative partners, big words, I leave all that. But see what I put in the center over there. It's focus of safety beyond standards. So every time we have an audit, and that goes in the airline too, we just want to show how compliant we are. Every FTO wants to show how compliant they are. Every organization wants to show how compliant. But I think our definition of safety should now be beyond compliance. And that's why we need to focus on safety, which is beyond the standards. All of you aviators over here, if I walk from one corner to the other corner and ask you what is the definition of safety, I'm sure each one of you will know, but you will have a different definition. According to me, the definition of safety is in very simple words. We were not born to fly. We were born to walk on Mother Earth. If we were born to fly, God would have given us wings. We are mounting on something and we are flying it. We have taken this 100-ton tube, filled it up with passengers, and we're flying it. So look at the probability of things going wrong. There is a huge probability of things going wrong. So I think we as aviators, we owe it to the next generation, we owe it to the many more generations to come, that the first thing in safety what we need to do is we need to identify the risk. You know what's the biggest risk I see today? A CPL holder, 200 hours, sitting on the right seat of a very modern aircraft. It's a risk. When I went to fly way back in 1989, the Airbus 320, I had to have 500 hours of experience flying a Boeing 737 before I could sit on the right seat. But today you're sitting in 200 hours. Isn't that a risk? I hope all of you identify that as a risk. So if we've identified it as a risk, we need to work on it. We need to build a very, very strong standard operating procedure around it. Will the risk disappear? The risk will never go. The risk will still be there. But with the strong standard operating procedures that we are going to build, we are going to bring that risk within acceptable levels. Every pilot who flies today cannot say that I am absolutely 100% risk-free. We all have our risks. Every time we've flown, we've had a risk. But if you have very strong operating procedures, I'm sure you're going to bring that risk within acceptable levels. So I think, guys, that I will be concluding my thing by saying that safety has to go beyond standards. Safety has to go well beyond the compromise of just being, compliant. Thank you very much once again. I think there was a lot of words of wisdom. We saw some great sort of forward thinking from our Civil Aviation Minister today. I think we are at the right place at the right time, and this doesn't go for new aviators, but I think it goes for all of you. So I just want to conclude, and this is for Aero Club and for Sakthi Aircraft Industries. I think the decision is not just about assembling an aircraft. It's about laying a foundation for a self-reliant, technologically advanced, and sustainable aviation ecosystem. And again, the word sustainability, I think that's very important. India is taking a step forward, becoming a global player in the aviation industry, not just as a market, what we were talking about numbers, but I think even as a contributor. That's where our work is. We're going to reduce cost, we're going to lower emissions, create jobs. I think we've spoken a lot about it. And of course, back to the same old thing which I keep saying, is improving flight training infrastructure, all of which will align itself together and create a sustainable future for aviation. So guys, we'll be ending this afternoon. It's not about just a session today that we have, but let's celebrate this milestone and look forward for an exciting new chapter in Indian aviation. Thank you very much, and wonderful. Once again, thanks for having arranged this.
Thank you, Captain Mitra, for a very exhaustive overview of the pilot training needs in our country and the expected growth of aviation in our country. I would now like to invite on stage Captain Harish Lamba of Air India, and I request him to please touch upon how commercial airlines are becoming significant stakeholders in the training ecosystem in India. Please put your hands together and welcome Captain Harish Lamba.
Yeah, but it's not there. PPT I've already shared. Yeah. I'm not sure, I'm not able to see that. It's working? Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, all dignitaries and senior aviation personnel sitting in the room. Special thanks to Aero Club of India and Sakthi Industries, Shri Rajiv Pratap Rudy, Member Parliament and President Aero Club, invited us to speak about and extending this platform where we can talk about the requirements and challenges for the industry. So currently, since morning, everybody is talking about the rapid and exponential growth of aviation sector. This is leading to requirement of all trained personnel in different fields, be it pilot, cabin crew, ground staff, security, engineering. All departments need the skilled talent, which is the biggest problem which we are facing in coming years. The current infrastructure which is there available in Indian FTO environment will not be sufficient and capable to ensure the requirement which is coming ahead in many years will be catered. The biggest challenge we see is the expansion of FTOs, maybe growth in their capabilities, or maybe setup of new FTOs. Air India, just a moment. Air India is in process to build up world-class training capabilities in India in line with the Indian government vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. We are setting up South Asia's largest FTO in a single location, that is Amaravati in India. We have already ordered 34 airplanes which will be delivered in next 6 months, and these airplanes will be assembled and operational on maybe in September to October. As Captain Ashim already explained us, there is a requirement which is to keep sky safe. Not only to meet the requirement, but also to have the standards. So dedicated team was designed and ensured to reach all the international FTOs where Singapore Airlines, Emirates, United Airlines teams visited, understood the requirement, and ensured the best practices are incorporated while the setup of Air India FTO. Air India will have single largest location pilot school in India. Out of these 34 airplanes which they have ordered, 31 are single engine Piper and 3 twin engine Diamond aircrafts. The campus which is coming up in Amaravati is a greenfield airport, and they are coming up with 10 acres of campus which is designed and developed for operational area, administrative area, hostel facility, and classrooms. Classrooms will be 100% digitalized iPads will be used, as Captain already said, to take care of sustainability also. There will be no use of paper, everything will be digitalized. And for the curriculum also, they are working with the international best practices and guidelines. Curriculum is designed in such a way that whenever a pilot is moving from airline and reaching to, moving from FTO and reaching to airline, he should have the required desired capabilities. All the airline tools, that is documentation, manuals, Jepson charts, and safety management system will be incorporated from day one to ensure that their standards are met and expectations which are there for airline to be safe are met at the basic initial stage. Biggest problem today is airlines spending a lot of energy, time to ensure the required standards are achieved once the pilot who is CPL holder is joining the airline. The only difference which Air India vision is to ensure that all the ecosystem, all the environment of airline is replicated in FTOs, so that when the transition takes place, it is only the change of equipment, not the environment. All the flight planning system to safety management system and to any other possible tool which is airline using should be extended at the initial stage. The aim for the, it's gone, okay. And Air India vision was not only to ensure that have a footprint in the FTO, but also the aim is to meeting the pilot requirement, that is one part, but the standards which needed in the aviation industry is the final goal. Also, there is a huge cost involved at the FTO level. People have the issues when the financial burden comes, the talent which is available in country is not able to achieve the goals because of the constraint for the finance. So they are coming up with, we are coming up with the loan facility, and that repayment can be done only after once you complete your training, and 100% loan facility of cadets will be taken care by the airline and the banks. And another last thing is that, I'm sorry, thanks. I'm out of words. Thank you everyone for inviting us, and thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Now we will have in-depth analysis of the current situation. For that, we need to get the stage ready. So till we get the stage ready, I would request some of those who will be in the panel as well as our speakers who have spoken, if they could just come to the site for a group photograph. So we could have Captain Ashim Mitra, Captain Harish Lamba, Captain Pavan Arora, Air Marshal R. Nambiar. So we just need 2 minutes to set up the stage. In the interim, we'll have a group photograph, and then we'll call everybody on stage. Right? So can we just gather for a group photograph, and I request the hotel staff to please put the chairs on stage so that we can then resume with our sessions. Till we get the stage in order, we could have a group photograph. So I was just wondering if we can have everybody gather next to the D40 and take a picture. delighted to welcome Captain Pavan Arora, who is on the other end, and he will be talking about an independent report by the ACI why the DA-40 is a very well suited, is an excellent trainer aircraft, and he will be sharing the experience on DA-40 NG. So I hand it over to Captain Pavan Arora to take this presentation forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pavan Arora. We will cover in the next few minutes, we'll keep it light. Actually, you've heard a lot of statistics, a lot of needs, a lot of this, a lot of that. So we'll try and keep it light, though it's technical, but we won't take any exams. We're giving pamphlets at the end of it, so you can carry them home and study them there. Okay, so how did I get into this situation? I know Mr. Rudy since he joined IndiGo somewhere in 2009, 2010. And we did a bit of groundwork there. And I've known him since then. The relationship continues. In the Air Force, for those of me who were in the Air Force, I used to be a wing commander, a test pilot. And thereafter, I joined Civvy Street. And it'll be nice if he can excuse me. Thank you. And I joined Civvy Street, so I did about just under 19 years in the Air Force, qualified instructor and a test pilot. And thereafter I came to Civvy Street. I was a 737 captain, a trainer on the 737, followed by the 320. That's the background. Let's get on to the presentation. Right side screen, please. Okay, both sides, please. My face is right in front of everybody. Okay, so where do ACI and I meet up? We met up in 1991. On the left is the Chickenox microlight, which ACI had imported that time and given to the NCC. So I'd gone and flown that for an air experience. I was based in Bangalore. And that little thing you can see there is my 3-year-old daughter with me. Very proud. That is the same aeroplane that's flying. It looks like a rickshaw when it's on the ground, but it actually flies. Right? And that little thing there, that small little acorn has become the big oak. She's sitting there. And I put this here intentionally for the human aspect. The human aspect is that those youngsters then aspire to be that, even at that age, they're aspiring. Right? We may not know it as parents, but the kids know it. Right? And that's where we have to hold their hands and take them through, right? And how are we going to do it? Right, now this aircraft at the bottom is the Husky. These were also ACI aeroplanes, which were dual registered and given to NDA for flying training of cadets. So it's got a civil registration. In my logbook, this is not the registration. In my logbook, it's Kilo 2456. That is the Air Force registration. So that's a dual registration aeroplane, which those of you to whom it matters would need to note this point down. You can have dual registered aeroplanes. On the right side is the aeroplane that we're talking about. In the right side there also you can see it. That is the aeroplane that I did the assessment physically on at Meerut just 3 days ago. On the 8th of March, spent nearly half a day there assessing the aeroplane. It's nice to have books, but it's nicer to be hands-on. Okay. This is just a snapshot of how I can talk and why I can talk about this. In 1996, I got a DGCA flight instructors rating, which is what is used at the FTOs to train people. Captain Kamal Kumar was here. We stood outside the same room and did our FIR Vivas together. That is my SFI certificate, simulator certificate from the 737. And that is my ATPL license, which has got the 737 on all the other aeroplanes endorsed on it. So I'm able to relate right from the small fish to the big fish. And just remember, there's never a big fish without the small fish, right? So the small fish is the most important link. We are talking today about sustainability, where the small fish are disappearing and the big fish are disappearing. Along with that, we can draw a simile over here. Okay. Now we get on to the serious stuff. What is the problem? The problem is that we have major expenses. We have trained pilots. We have thousands of trained pilots, but we have thousands of trained pilots who we cannot induct immediately into the airline, which is exactly what Captain Ashim spoke about just a little while ago, right? And where is the gap? The gap is that the end product of the FTO doesn't meet the induction requirement of the airline. Why doesn't it meet? You saw all those cockpits, the 4 cockpits he showed you, right from the basic conventional instruments up to the 4th generation glass cockpit, right? And which was, somebody mentioned earlier, 40-year-old aeroplanes. I think Mr. Rudy, Honorable MP, he mentioned 40-year-old aeroplanes, right? The last Cessna 152 was manufactured in the 1980s, right? So we're sitting 45 years away from the last manufactured. The initial manufacturer still flying could be over 50 years old, right? I'm sure none of us wants to drive a 50-year-old car. Okay, now this is the numbers. Okay, so these numbers are going to be available to everybody. There's a handout made for everybody with all these slides, except my qualifications. That vanity part I do not wish to circulate. So now you look at the green columns. How was this done, right? You can see a lot of numbers, right? Now, as a test pilot, when you assess something, you go for the critical aspects. If I get 3.4, 3.3, 3.5 meters per second, it's not really a consideration for me, because that 3.4, 3.5, 3.6 relates to a speed which is 105, 110, 120, which virtually gives me the same effect in the cockpit when flying, right? But what affects me is those green numbers. Now, if you look at the material, it's full glass composite, which the capability exists here, which we can exploit, right? It also gives a certain amount of life to the aeroplane. It's a low wing. Now, why is this? You'll find low wing is marked green in 4 places. Why is low wing, right? All your commercial airlines, the 737, the Airbus 320, the bigger ones, they're all low wing aeroplanes, right? So the habit that sitting under a high wing and looking like this and sitting over a low wing and looking like this is an ergonomic aspect which is yes, please. We've got some pilots who've flown, who are experienced on the DA-40 and the DA-42, and we would like to invite them to join us over here. Give us a minute, please.
We have on stage with us pilots of airlines who will be sharing their experience. So please give them a round of applause.
Please welcome them on board. They are my team, right? They are, okay, I'll tell you a small story, right? Or a small saying. Who's the sharpest pilot in the cockpit? Is there anybody who could guess that over the range of experiences and over the range of ranks between junior first officer to an examiner, who would be the sharpest pilot in the cockpit? One answer. Okay, I'll save the time. The sharpest pilot in the cockpit is a newly released first officer. Give them a hand, ladies and gentlemen. I've flown 14,000 hours in multi-engine cockpits, right? They are the sharpest people in the cockpit. They're fresh out of training and they know their nuts and bolts. Right? So give them a hand, please. They are my team. Right. Okay. So now we're talking about the wing position. In a high wing aeroplane, the Cessna is like this. You're looking like this. And people are looking like this at the wheels to land. And this is a low wing aeroplane where you're looking over the wing. You don't see the wings and you land it like you land an airliner. Those other numbers are just numbers. Let's get into, now I've marked 3.3 rate of climb. That gives us typically a 7 degrees altitude to climb out, which is a comfortable climb out altitude. Go down to the cruise speed of 141 knots. If you look, those aeroplanes on the right side are high performance aeroplanes, right? Whereas the DA-40 is not typically considered to be in the high performance light aeroplane category, right? But it still gives you 141 knots, right? Which approaches the approach speeds, or what are the speeds on when you're coming in for landing on a 320 or a 737. And similar on a ATR, by the way, It's got adequate range. We are not expecting more than 50 nautical miles cross-country requirements for licensing, right? So it's absolutely fine, the kind of ranges we've got. Now, look at the demonstrated crosswind limits, right? If you look across even the high-performance aeroplanes, nobody touches 25 knots, right? And having done training, right, that is a very, very good figure for doing training. If we can get somebody as a trainee to land in 20 to 25 knots of crosswind, you've got life sorted for that person in the airline industry. Let's go down to the engine manufacturer, which is the next green item. Now, if you look at the columns, all of the other engines are made in the US, right? We can think about it. I won't say more than that. This one's made in Austria. It is typically German engineering standards. The other aspect is that we're going to have this engine manufactured here, right, over a period of time, right? Now, if we can get the engine manufacture to be done here, and Sakthi says they have the capability, it's a major plus point for us. If you look under the CD 170, there's only one place where I marked yellow. If you look at that engine, it gives you a max takeoff power of 168 horsepower, but it gives you a max continuous power of 150 horsepower, 155 horsepower. And if you look at all the other figures, nobody drops their max continuous power, which shows an inherent lesser capability of the engine. I won't say weakness, but it's less, the engine is lesser capable, right? And that's why it's marked out over there. Now, we come to the fuel. Jet A, Jet A1. Everybody talks about diesel-powered aeroplanes. Please understand that this is a marketing terminology. Diesel and aviation turbine fuel or jet engine fuel is the same distillate at different levels with different additives. Diesel has a higher freezing point. It freezes at about -5 or thereabouts. ATF, which is used in 737s and 320s and ATRs and all the other commercial turbine engine aeroplanes, they freeze at about -50 to -51, right? So when somebody talks about diesel, technically, if you look up Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is not a technical manual, they will club them together, right? But ATF is the one which has a wider range of usable temperatures. The other part about the other 100 LL, all that 100 LL is 100 octane petrol, right? To put it simply, it is the same thing you put in your car. When you go to these new petrol stations who've got 100 octane, you can get it there. The problem with 100 octane is storage, flammability, and availability, right? Plus the cost, plus if you go deeper into the technical details, you will realize that the energy output of the same volume or the same weight of fuel is higher for ATF than for petrol. The fuel consumption, 5.6, 5.8, 5.7, those numbers themselves are much less than petrol, right? And petrol is more expensive, and it is giving you less fuel economy. So that's why the green numbers are there. They are very similar, 5.6, 7, and 8. Now we can go down to the empty weights, right? Similar. We've got useful load of about 300 kilos. The higher useful loads are there in those last two aeroplanes on the right side, which have got 339 and 308. Those are aerobatic category of aeroplanes. We are not looking at the aerobatic category for FTOs, right? Let's go to the top chart. Those red aeroplanes, those aerobatic category aeroplanes are already marked in red. You can see the costs. What we did was we compared the costs that we've got. And if you look at the diamond, the costs that are projected, right, are 5 crores. Anyway, those are the costs which are projected, slightly lesser than the other two. Technam, I already shown you there's a issue with the engine over there. The max major benefit is from local production, right? If you have to import everything, then you are looking at supply chain issues, which is today itself a major issue, right? If you have local production, hopefully we're looking at a slightly better stage. Now, the viable solution is local manufacture and supply chain, which is what I've covered in detail. And what we know now is that Sakthi Industries are willing to do local production of the aircraft and scale it up from initially from knockdown kits all the way up to assembly, to basically to parts manufacture and aircraft production. Thanks. Next slide, please. Okay, so now let's talk about the flight deck. This is the aeroplane part, which Captain Ashim was talking about knowledge and skill transfer from one type of aeroplane to the other type of aeroplane, right? Okay, the background is, as a test pilot, we are trained in ergonomics to understand how information flows to the pilot and how that pilot uses the information to manipulate controls of the aeroplane to fly the aeroplane, right? On the top left, or I'll start with the center. The center is the DA-40 flight deck. On the top left is the Airbus 320 flight deck, and on the bottom right is the 737 NG flight deck, right? Just the standby instruments. These are the 3 standby instruments, right? These are the same standby instruments that are available here on the 737, I beg your pardon, on the 320, and the same 3 instruments available here on the 737. So it's very easy for a person going from this flight deck to either of these flight decks to change their sight, their vision to where the standby instruments are located and to be able to use that information. Now we'll compare individual cockpits. Okay, so now this is the 320 versus the DA-40 cockpit, right? Now, if you notice, this is the, oops, sorry. This is the side-by-side arrangement in the actual cockpit. The other 2 instrument panels, which I put them together to show the actual positioning, and then I've split them so that we can compare them to the aeroplane and see how they compare ergonomically with what's in the aeroplane. This is called the PFD-ND display, and this is the engine panel. Standby instruments we've already covered, right? Now, if you look over here, this is the artificial horizon. Here is the artificial. This is the artificial horizon in the on the top, in the center is the artificial horizon on the DA-40. This is the map, navigation display. I beg your pardon. This is the compass. Here's the compass. This is the speed. Here's the speed tip. This is the height. Here's the altimeter, right? Now, if you see these bugs, right? See this? See this? Now, the concepts are similar. We can actually put speeds with knobs which are bugged up similar to these knobs over here. They are bugged up with knobs which are positioned to change these bugs on the DA-40. So it is a 1-to-1 correlation between how you operate the instrumentation in the DA-40 as compared to the 320, right? So there is no, you saw some of the pictures which Captain Ashim showed you for the older aeroplanes, right? There they are watch dials, they are double needles, right? The knobs stick out of the instruments themselves, right? Here they are put on control panels. This is the FCU. This is the flight control unit of the Airbus 320. You have similar knobs which are okay, here they are, right? Similar knobs to this to manage the bugs for this as well as the altimeter setting. Now, what is the information transfer? One of the most critical aspects of flying a glass cockpit aeroplane is the FMA, Flight Mode Annunciator, right? If the trainee can get the FMAs correct, right, life is sorted. That FMA, when that trainee reads the FMA, he sees it with the eye, he reads it or she reads it. Excuse me if I use a singular gender, it's easier for me, right? He or she reads it. That reading goes back into the ear of the trainee. That registers in the brain, and that follows through with how the aeroplane flies, right? Now, if the trainee is unable to accomplish registering the FMAs after having made the changes, we find that these trainees have a problem assimilating a glass cockpit experience, right? So now, in the basic aeroplane itself, if you have FMAs and if you have things, can you see one speed over here? This speed has been set for some reason, right? Similarly, there are speeds set over here. Altimeter set, there's an altimeter set. So once these FMAs are called out, right, and the trainee assimilates that those numbers are going in, and then there is a brain response to as to this is correct or not, and the correction comes whether it is correct or not. If this is incorrect, then the brain makes that hand make a correction, and that's how the aeroplane flies, right? So that is enough said about the FMA. This is the, sorry, about the PFD. This is the navigation display. Now, all of us have got lots of stuff like this, lot of gizmos like this in the car, right? Your Google Maps, right? If you look at this display, doesn't it look like your Google map, right? It's exactly the same philosophy. It uses the GPS, it uses other navigation sensors also, right? Now this, if you compare it with this, right, this is rudimentary, but this equipment was developed in the 70s when the first Airbus came. This has been developed in the 2010s and 2020s, right? So that's why the enormous amount of information that is available that can be utilized by the pilot. Now from this aeroplane to come to this aeroplane, it's a piece of cake, because that trainee has assimilated the complexity of all this stuff and brought it here, right? Now if you look at this gauge, okay, this set of gauges, right? Now you're wondering what are these set of gauges? These set of gauges are these set of gauges, right? Just look at the dials, look at the dials. These are the engine parameters, right? This is the center of the flight deck. This is also in the center of the flight deck, right? Now as far as training goes, you will say, okay, but now these are two displays. How do two pilots use them, right, for flying? Because they are in the center of the flight deck. So the left pilot, oops, okay. So the left pilot uses this as the primary flight display. This can be switched into becoming this display, right? So now both the pilots have their own primary instruments to fly the aeroplane. Now where does this information disappear? This information gets compacted and comes into this right corner, which gives you spatial orientation as to where the aeroplane is and where the aeroplane is going. So in aviation, what you do is aviate, navigate and communicate. So you aviate with this, you navigate with this, and you communicate with your radio set, right? So sorry I took a little time on this, but it's important to understand why this similarity has been assessed, right? If you look on these numbers on top, you will find the headings, you will find the GPS, autopilot. These are very, very similar indications to what you have on the 320, right? Let's move on to the 737 from here. Okay, now this is the 737 flight deck. I know by now you are bored because it looks very similar to what I just showed you on the previous slide. This is the 737 NG primary flight display, the navigation display, the engine display, the standby instruments, the MCP, it's called the mode control panel in the 737, and some switches to manage all these things. And if you look at this, you'll say, oh, but we just saw it a little while ago. No, you didn't. What you did was you saw the 320 and the DA40. Now you're seeing the 737 and the DA40, and you can see how similar the setup appears. Okay, the next step. When a pilot comes to an airline, right, one of the major issues that used to be documentation. When you did your technical on a complex aeroplane like the 737, the F-27, the HS-748, the ATR, right? You went from a simple 15-20 page booklet, maybe a 40-page booklet, to a 500 or 1,000-page book, right? Now, the documentation which is there in the DA40, I pull out the DA40, DA42 is similar, right? Aligns itself because of the EASA standards which are used to prepare the documentation to an airliner documentation, right? So when the pilot comes into ground school, the same definitions are already done in basic stage. The same performance, the same landing distance, the same takeoff distance, the same engine out, they're already covered. So they're already familiar with the terms and they're already familiar with the documentation which leads them there. So it becomes, easing themselves into the next aeroplane becomes so much simpler. Okay, the next level of complexity. Airbus needs a multi-engine aeroplane before you can come for type rating. The 737 doesn't, because I've done both ratings, right? So they need a multi-engine rating. We are discussing that. That's a separate topic altogether. We are discussing that. We will not talk about it now. If you had the same cockpit, right, and took out the engine from the nose and now put one on each wing, right, what would you need to do? You would need to learn two things, two sets of instruments which relate to the additional instruments for the second engine, which comes as a second column over, in the instrument panel, it comes as a second column on the navigation display. And you would have to learn how to handle two engines. That means one engine going would lose a certain amount of services and it would create a certain amount of drag on one side and excess thrust on the other side, in other terms called asymmetry, right? You would have to learn the asymmetry part of it. And if you had the same flight deck, how much easier it would be for you to be able to grasp what is happening, because it's already happened before. Now all you're doing is handling the engines. Okay, at the bottom is a very, very important point, is that a shared simulator platform, utilizing a common simulator platform for both aircraft further enhances cost effectiveness, right? Having worked on the 320 full family, 330 and 340, right? Jet Airways had a simulator in Mumbai which could be used between the 330 and the 340. Jet didn't have 330s that time, right? It's a similar situation. That was 2 engines, 4 engines, right? This is also electronically configurable. The simulator is another topic altogether. We're not discussing that, but it's possible. Okay, so now we get on to the safety design. If you remember the second last or the third last slide which Captain Ashim spoke about as a very important topic was the key safety features. So it's got composite construction, it's got very high crash resistance testing, and the statistics show that it has got much lesser fatalities as compared to most of the other training aeroplanes. Now what are the other features we are looking at? The other features we are looking at is diesel engine, right? Before we look at the advantages of the diesel engine, there is a certain handling difference between petrol engines, which is the LL100 engine, and the ATF engine, right? The turbine engines can be constructed or designed to much higher levels of power. But on the flip side is that the ATF engines are slower in response, and they are now mostly controlled by what is called the FADEC, Full Authority Digital Electronic Control. So even if you slam the throttle, like you would have seen in your newer cars also, if you put your foot on the accelerator all the way down, the car will only accelerate at the rate that your FADEC in the car allows it to accelerate. So there are differences. Now a person having handled a turbine engine in basic stage itself, right, augments the feel when they come onto the bigger aeroplane. Jet A1 fuel is less flammable, same fuel which the pilot will use later, and it's cost effective. Already explained the energy levels. Widespread availability. Any airport you go to, you get Jet A1. The conclusions are, the Diamond NG appears to meet the requirements of optimal training aircraft for flight operations in India, for all the reasons which have been covered by Captain Ashim and the gentleman from Air India. The blend of reliability is already covered. Okay, now by investing in the DA40, FTOs can help students with the necessary skills and experience for a successful aviation career while ensuring long-term operational viability. The viability part is the techno-economic aspect of the aeroplane. The operational part is the what I've covered in terms of the flight deck operation. Right. I will take questions, I think, a little later, and thank you very much for listening.
Yes, I would request Shri Rajiv Pratap Rudi to please come up on stage, and Dr. Manikam as well. And we would request them to please present a small memento to Sir, to Captain Pavan Arora. So we made it easier for you. It's in a box. We are presenting to our pilots as well. Okay. We would like them to share their experiences briefly, and then we'll call our dignitaries back to present you with a small token. So you can start. Yeah, but they're speaking now, right? So I request you to please start. You can introduce yourself and share your experience. Either way, Sasutu. I request the rest of you to please be seated while she's addressing everybody.
Thank you so much, sir. I was once taught by a senior mentor in this airline as well, that whenever you get any opportunity, make sure you circulate it back into the society. He's no longer working with the same airline, but I still keep in touch with him. And along with it, I'd like to thank Rudy sir for actually providing me this opportunity to share my experience in front of you all. I'm Mansi Batra, a first officer with IndiGo for the last 6 years on the A320 fleet. Experienced on Diamond DA40 for about 185 hours for the single engine in Negrua. And post CPL, I worked as an air traffic controller. And then 2.5 years later, IndiGo happened for me. So very good afternoon to all of you. And I'll try to keep it very short, but impactful. So irrespective of the number of aircrafts that I have flown or eventually I'm bound to fly in the near future, Diamond DA40 is likely to be biased because it's my first. That's why. And along with the amazing guidance of my instructors, this aircraft was really beautiful to fly, smooth, simple, beautiful to handle, especially for a budding new pilot like me who didn't even have a two-wheeler license back then. My initial experience on a DA40 was actually better than what I'd expected. On the technicality part of it, the aircraft controls were not overly sensitive, at the same time stable yet predictable, making it a great new choice for the new pilots. I actually happen to recall one of the incidents that I happened to witness in my flying school with respect to this aircraft. So to get into IGRUA, this was almost, I would say, 12 years back, you had to get through a wombat test. That's, in brief, I would say it's a computerized assessment for which you have to undergo multiple levels of stress, adaptability, multitasking levels, at the same time, situational awareness, which is actually needed in all terms of aviation till the time you're flying. So to get through a wombat, you needed a minimum of 70%. And later on, this percentage was also used to assign the type of aircraft in the flying school depending on the complexity and the percentage of it. So the higher you score, complex is your aircraft and the handling of it. I remember a batchmate of mine scored a whopping 96% in that. And he was allotted aircraft which was comfortable to do aerobatics, at the same time had an analog. And he humbly requested within a few minutes to assign him a DA40. Gladly, the authorities did agree on that, considering that the fleet was slightly on the larger side, so obviously it worked out well for him. And later on, I asked him once the session got over, so as to why did you choose a DA40 over something which is, at that maturity, I asked him, why are you stepping down from your caliber? And he simply asked, and he simply replied by saying that I have to be an airline captain. I don't need aerobatics. The transition has to be smooth. If I have to learn eventually flying a glass cockpit, why not start learning it early? And he happens to be a captain in IndiGo now. And apart from the technicality part of it, initially, if you asked me when I started flying this aircraft, the initial the design that actually caught my attention was the bubble canopy of it. I happen to always see aircrafts with a high wing design, with the cockpit and the pilot actually being stuck. I won't say the word stuck actually, but yeah, somewhere in between. It was like a high wing aircraft. This aircraft actually gave a better visibility on the side and as well as on the forward for better situational awareness that is needed for any novice or future pilots as well. So I'd like to end by concluding that a great choice, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Arthur, and I did my training in Australia. The aircraft that I flew was Diamond Star 40 for the CPL flying, and for the multi-engine also I flew the DA42. I currently fly the Airbus A320 family in IndiGo. The best part of flying the DA40 for my training was the control stick. Airbus has a side stick. So the control stick that we used in the DA40, the same hand-eye movement that was built during my training can be used now and is being used now for flying the Airbus. And the muscle memory that was built during my training can be incorporated now as well. So these are some of the points that I think that is significant for this DA40 aircraft. And yeah, and the other part was the flying capabilities of this aircraft. This aircraft is a beautiful machine, and it flies like a glider. And all of the other things that you want to do, like stall and practice engine failure, it can be done easily on this aircraft. So this is one of the finest aircraft for a student pilot to learn. Yeah, thank you so much.
Hi, very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandon. I'm a first officer with IndiGo. I've been with the airline for the last 5 years. I had the opportunity of training on 2 different aircraft types for my flight training. One was the Cessna 172 and one was the DA42 NG. And so I went from this 40-something-year-old aircraft to the new kid on the block. And I just remember being really excited the first day I flew the Diamond DA42 NG, because shifting from the Cessna to the DA42, the cockpit just felt much newer. Everything was in its correct place. It just felt really comfortable, and the transition from the Cessna to the DA42 was really easy. But then moving on from that, transitioning from the DA42 to the 320 was also really easy for me, because the DA42 I had 2 power levers instead of the 6 levers that you need for a normal piston engine. On top of that, starting the engine also used to be the turn of a key, and you turn a switch on, and that's how the engine used to start. And it's very similar to how the Airbus was. It was a really beautiful aircraft to fly, and till date, I'm captivated by it. And I think it's a really good choice that they've gone in for with the DA40, and hopefully the DA42 as well. So thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Snehil. I joined IndiGo Airlines in 2022, but I started my career with IndiGo Cadet program, which I joined in 2018. I was primarily trained on the DA40s. Yesterday, when Captain Bhalla asked us to prepare something about our experience on the DA40, I was momentarily concerned because it's been 5 years since I've flown the aircraft, but then I opened my old logbook and I was immediately transported back in time. I remembered from my first flight to my first solo to getting my PPL and finally earning my CPL. It's where I have clocked over 200 hours in 37 different diamond registered aircraft. It's where I learned my fundamentals of flight. The DA-40 is an extremely superb aircraft to train on, from its sleek design to its modern avionics. But more importantly, it's an extremely agile and extremely reliable aircraft. It feels like an extension of yourself. So that was very important for me, and it made me very comfortable while flying. I am truly privileged to have DA-40 as my first aircraft. Diamond does have a good presence in India, but I genuinely believe it needs an even stronger footprint so that fellow student pilots would have the opportunity to experience what we have experienced, the seamless transition from a small aircraft to the A320. Captain Bhalla, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And please forgive me for saying this, but I think I prefer the DA-40s over the Airbus. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. I would now request Dr. Manikam to please come up on stage and present a small token of appreciation to these pilots for coming here and sharing their stories with everyone here. So I request to please bring up the boxes. So if you could please present these young pilots with a small token of appreciation. So we are presenting to the pilots a small miniature aircraft. It's in a box. So what they have experienced firsthand will now be something that they can carry as a souvenir or keep as a souvenir at their desk. Thank you. I request you to please take your seats off the stage. I think they would like to take a group picture. A group picture is done. If you could please stand together for a group photograph. Thank you. Please allow us a moment for us to set the stage for our subsequent session. Right. We are grateful to Mr. Harish Lamba for his presentation. I request him to please come up on stage. We would like to present a token of appreciation to him. I request Shri Arvind Badoni, Secretary General of ACI NEC India, to please present a token of appreciation to Harish ji as well. Thank you. Please allow us a couple of minutes to just set the stage for the remainder of the session. I request everybody who's standing at the back of the hall, please settle down, take your seats, and please move up. We have vacant seats in the front rows, in the round tables. from Captain Pavan Arora about the DA-40 as a trainer aircraft, its performance, plus we've also heard from the pilots on what has been their experience. We move on to the next leg of the analysis, and I would like to invite on stage a few gentlemen who will throw and give us their perspective. So please put your hands together and welcome back on stage Captain Pavan Arora. Please welcome him back on stage. Please welcome Air Marshal Retired Raghunath Nambyar. Please welcome on stage Air Marshal Retired Puneet Sareen. Please welcome Shri Arvind Badoni, Secretary General of ACI NAC India. And please welcome Mr. Vaibhav, CEO of Sakthi Aircraft Industry. Please give them a round of applause and welcome them on stage. I would now request Air Marshal Raghunath Nambyar to please address the audience and talk to us about how this aircraft, the Diamond, is a game changer for all stakeholders, FTOs and trainees. Please give a round of applause to Air Marshal Raghunath Nambyar.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I have the difficult task of keeping you awake and running through my slides. Most of the gyan which is on these slides are already known to you, not once or twice, but many times over. I'll, however, try to take in attention and keep it still going by trying to talk about something which others have not mentioned. So, what I'm talking today about is the Diamond and how the Diamond DA-42 NG in particular, and why is it most suitable not only for the aviation sector holistically, but for all the stakeholders involved. Next. I think the Minister himself has spoken at length on our Indian aviation sector and how much it is booming. And all the other problems which I have listed in this slide are already known to you. I have nothing additional to add. Next slide, please. I think the first officers who are here from IndiGo, I think they've spoken about most of these things except perhaps for the Astro engine, which is a Mercedes A-class engine designated OM 640. And is now been sort of modified and tailored to be used for airborne applications. A fabulous engine, single lever, with all the advantages of a diesel engine in the sense that it does not have any of the electrical things like magneto and spark plugs and all the other things which can go wrong in a normal petrol engine. The Garmin 1000 NXI has already been touched upon, and all the other facts have already been brought out, except for the fact of the durable composite airframe. The composite airframe of this aircraft weighs half as much as an aluminium or metal skinned aircraft with thrice the strength, with no life limits. That's the major advantage of this aircraft. Next. The aircraft has been tested to 26G crash resistance. Some of the very interesting features on this aircraft are the seats are locked with nice large Teflon bushes below them to make sure that if there is an impact, the seat absorbs the shock and make sure that the occupant is not hurt to the level it should naturally be. The seat obviously for these reasons does not move forward and backward, is locked, and it's only the rudder pedals which can come back and forth. Benign flight characteristics have been mentioned by most of us. Because of the diesel engine running on ATF, The aircraft is not prone to the failures which are normally associated with petrol engines because of the lack of complexity as well as the ease of operation. Let me touch upon what is very important to most of us, and most of us are not experienced because touch wood, we have not had a reason to get into an accident on the DA-40 or the 42. But the fact is the aircraft is super safe. If you were to look at statistics, the general aviation statistics of the United States, which is the largest operator of this aircraft, indicates that it has about 6 accidents which are reportable in about 100,000 hours of flying. That is 6 accidents in about 100,000 hours, 1 lakh hours of flying. And the DA-40 and the 42 have less than 1 accident per this same 100,000 hours. So it is 1/6 of the general aviation average, which is a great advantage. 1/6 better. Next, please. I think the entire slide has been already talked about. I'll just touch upon the reduced maintenance downtime. When you have an aircraft which is manufactured in India, and as our chairman had promised, that we will treat this as if a aircraft is down anywhere, an aircraft is on ground anywhere in India, which is under our purview, we will treat it, like we said, as a vehicle off-road. That is, we will stop our production and push the equipment there to make it serviceable. And that's what makes this very interesting. That means our maintenance downtime is going to be far lower than what was the industry standard so far. Next, please. The MOU which we signed today this morning is a game changer as far as the aviation training scene of India is concerned. We have in one short step signed off for 200 aircraft, which gives us the sort of volume for going in for production of this aircraft in increased complexity as the years go by. And we are looking for a production run of about 200 aircraft plus in the next 24 to 36 months. We intend to set up a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility to cater for this requirement. And naturally, with it will come job creation and economic growth, all of which are very aspirational for a country like us. Next, please. I think I don't have to mention the fact how many pilots we require. It's, we have seen numbers from 20,000 to 30,000 and even 40,000. We believe we are here. We have got our foot into the door. We intend to go ahead with full speed and make this a reality. And by providing the primary resource required for flying training, and that is the training aircraft. And we would start with baby steps, but we will go forth with a lot of energy and focus, and we intend to achieve all the set targets for us. Obviously, having an aircraft which is very highly capable will always result in high quality of training. And since we have got a lot of associate partners with here in this all, looking after the leasing part of it and the bottom line part of it, I'm sure we will be able to make good, great product, especially from the FTO point of view, to get good numbers to add to the bottom line of all of us. And obviously, we will be having a consistent supply of trainer aircraft, which we believe are essential for what we intend to do. Next. I think all these are already spoken about. I will not dwell too much on them. They are all very important and are in the process of going forward. Next. I think this has already been spoken about, but I would like to mention the fact that not having to learn a new aircraft type when you graduate from a DA-40 to a DA-42 makes life that much more easier for the cadet when he or she is undergoing training. And therefore, a natural, clean linkage between the single engine DA-40 and the DA-42 makes life that much more easier both for the cadets as well as for the FTOs. Next. We believe the DA40 NG is here and is the best choice and the most optimal trainer aircraft for India. And that's why we have decided to make it here. And we believe that, as pointed out earlier, this is a pivotal moment for the aviation sector. And it enables India to produce high-quality pilots for the ever-growing aviation sector and supports the Make in India aviation initiative. Next, please. That's it, gentlemen. I've finished. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would now request Air Vice Marshal Puneet Sareen to please address the audience and talk about the safety aspects of the DA40NG as well as the maintenance and repair bit for this aircraft.
So good afternoon, gentlemen. I have the onerous task of wrapping it up and something fresh. We've heard a lot of inputs on the operational part from the operators. We've had first-hand accounts of what this aircraft means to them as a training stepping stone towards modern aircraft, a truly fourth generation glass cockpit fitted aircraft. So the topic given to me is high tech, high safety. So I'll try to give it all an engineer's perspective because I'm an engineer with approximately 36 years of experience, 10 years in the MRO side, defense MRO, but adapting to the civil side. Most of the issues which I brought out in my presentation have already been covered. I'll just try to dwell on few of them. So could I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so these numbers have already been rattled out. Why the numbers are important from the engineering perspective? When you have such a large number of aircraft operational, what we would like to bring out is that you can rest assured the sustenance support, the engineering updates, and the engineering upgrades will always be there in the pipeline to support fleet operations. More so for India, which is a very, very growing market. Next please. So coming to the performance metrics, they have been covered by the operators. Just give an engineering perspective on them. Next. So we have seen the criticality of the cruise speeds, the range, takeoff landing distance, and the ceiling. What I would like to just wrap it up by saying it's fast enough for cross-country trips, efficient enough for training, flying further, spending less. Now, that's the supply chain perspective. The cost, operating costs are minimal because of these kind of key metrics in the aircraft. Next slide, please. Overview of the aircraft sufficiently covered, notwithstanding. Now, if you look at it, we have mentioned on the airframe, we have spoken a little bit on the fuselage, the reinforcement, stringers, bulkheads. In general, the aspects have been covered, and you have been brought out already that previous speakers brought out the weight criteria. It's very lightweight, durable, and non-light, being composite. Unlike other aircraft, metal aircraft, they may be 40 years old, still flying, but they are prone to a lot of state of disrepair, which requires a lot of maintenance effort. So that is not true on this particular airframe. Similarly, the engine, it's a proven engine. There have been certain problems. We have evaluated each and every problem of the past, and we would like to give assurance to the House here that all these problems are getting fixed in the near future, with April 15th being the cutoff date, which is prior to the production starting off in India. Next. These are just the the dimensions, and of course the other key aspect here is the payload. So it's minimal fuss and engineered for efficiency in one line. Next. Construction aspects. Now I would like to just share a little bit more than just saying it's a composite one by going into a little specifics here. Next, please. So these are the aspects of design. And this is my favorite subject. I happen to be a member of the Aeronautics Research and Development Board for the last 12 years structures panel. So anyone who's really interested in dwelling upon any of these, one-to-one after this, I will be only too happy to discuss it in further detail. But what I would like to tell the House is that if you look at it, even the skin acts as a load-bearing component. And each and every aspect has been taken care of, more so when we go. And that's why you have the 26G strength, no corrosion, low maintenance, again, a maintainability feature, key result area as far as the uptime of the aircraft is concerned. Next slide, please. Now, these are the details of the structures. Again, sorry to put it so exhaustively here, but that's my pet subject. So I couldn't resist the temptation, right? Next, please. So the major structural inspections will come up only after 12 years, and further after that, another 12 years. If you do not match up with the flying hours, so 6,000 flying hours and 4,000 flying hours. High gloss polyurethane paint, the type of coats and paints possible are also available in the detailed pamphlets, which are available with all of you. And we can tailor it to those requirements, of course, white being the standard. So it's basically built to last longer because it's corrosion proof. Next, please. There is a choice on the wheel brakes. What we know from the statistics put up to us is cost-wise, performance-wise, both are almost same. And we have plentiful supply of the tires, the wheel fairings. So it's also very comfortable. And that's the motto, fly happy, fly smart. Next, please. This is a few details on the exterior equipment, right? All tailored to ensure a comfortable flight for the aircrew during the training. Next, please. This, you have already had a snapshot of it, certain key features of the ergonomics of the aircraft. Next, please. Power plant, we've had a large amount of disposition, and we'll go to the next slide, please. So these are again a little more of technical details. I'm sure the interested would see that it's the latest state-of-art engine, and what is further being fixed in this, or I would say enhanced, is the TBR. Presently it's 1800 hours. Study is already ongoing to take it and match it with the best or the competition to take it to 2100. And furthermore, we're also looking at maybe, by the time we get there on the Sakthi aircraft industries aircraft, we'll also have a facility for overhauling this aircraft available in India. Next, please. A little bit details on the propeller gearbox, right? So these are the areas which basically ensure sustained performance output by a lowering of the max RPM and ensuring higher torque drive and lower RPM drive to have further longevity on the rotational parts. Thank you. Next one. Fuel and environment efficiency. Next slide, please. This has been adequately covered. We just put it across on the power ratings to show you how you can get enhanced ranges or enhanced speeds based on the settings. Emissions, very, very key today's world. they're 20% less CO2 versus avgas, and there's this noise reduction which comes as a standard. So it's basically cleaner, greener operations. Avionics and instrumentation, again, I think I'll skip this because it's been adequately covered, but we'll just flash it for your benefit. Next. These are the details of the systems. There is a very good PDF download available for all those interested on exact details of each and every instrument in the cockpit. Freely available on the net. Next. Next one, please. So, of course, there are a lot of proprietary stuff which has gone in, and the best mix of instruments which are available as optional equipment also, which can be specified and they can be incorporated. Next, please. Power supply, there is an additional alternator which is available for powering up the air conditioning, and of course battery backup, emergency battery pack, all those details as flashed here. So there's adequate redundancy in the aircraft to ensure that safety is not compromised at all. Next. These are certain other additional customizable equipment which can be mounted for both comfort as well as for versatility. Next slide. Safety features. These have been covered. The spin resistance characteristics have also been discussed. The energy absorbing crash element, seat, the restraints, the ELT, and of course the backup analog systems. All this have been covered. And what Air Marshal Nambiar brought out, that the accident rate is as low as 0.35 per 100,000 flight hours. Next. So I'll leave you with invest today, save tomorrow with Sakthi Aircraft Industries, because what we are promising you is a total turnkey package for not only once you buy the aircraft, we'll sustain it for you, and whatever are the requirements from the engineering of the supply chain in terms of maintenance are being catered for. We are ensuring adequate stocking up of all spares which have shown any consumption in the past, as well as in the future we have guarantees from the OEM itself, because Sakthi is going to be the largest, single largest manufacturer of this aircraft outside of Diamond itself. So I leave you with that reassurance on behalf of the Sakthi group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I would now request Air Marshal Retired R. Nambiar to please come up back on the stage, sir. We welcome you for a discussion amongst the stalwarts from the aviation space, just to understand how the situation is now going to be impacted now that we will have those 200 trainer aircraft coming through. So I would request Air Marshal Nambiar to initiate this discussion. All of you can be seated on the chairs itself and just discuss this topic amongst yourself. So it's possible.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think it would be ideal if we could have some questions from the audience, because I'm sure those ones who are still here, who are very keen to ask some questions and find out get some answers from us on stage here about this program, and in particular about the Diamond DA-40. Yes, please.
My name is Amit Mittal and I've been in the industry for many years. My question is regarding the composite configuration of the aircraft. Unlike the metal aircraft, what happens when there is a small minor repair required? In the metal aircraft, that is easier to do. What are the aspects regarding repair and maintenance?
Yeah, so what I would like to correct you is that there's a mistaken perspective that composite repairs are difficult. Catering for composite repair is much simpler. In fact, even on-site damage repair is very practical and very easy. It all depends on the layup and the type of construction, which is different in every area. The OEM is going to provide us with the standard repair schemes, which are already certified. And right from the initiation of operations, we are setting up our own composite repair facility with complete capability to repair every type of damage you can possibly have, other than those where the design scheme itself would have to be made afresh and certified. Because the design TOT which is going to come to us is going to be limited in the initial phase. Once we get to full manufacturing, we'll have the entire design TOT, and then it will be possible for us to undertake uncertified repairs by designing a repair scheme and getting it certified locally in the country. So we already taken care of that when we had the sustenance package put together for a fleet size of what we are aiming at in India.
You also will have an MSP in place, maintenance support programs?
Can you repeat?
Maintenance support program.
Yeah, we will. That's what I said. When I was speaking, that will be able to offer you any package which you so require, right from the O level, I level, D level, and the extended repairs, on-site repairs, and this complete sustenance support. So we are just waiting to hear from the customers what kind of support they want, and then discuss the package with you. Of course, it depends on the numbers you are going to have, as well as the location and whether you want it on-site or you want it on our site.
I would like to add to that here. This is where the role of the Aero Club of India is going to be very, very integral. That anything about maintaining the machine, anything about having the machine flight worthy, anything to be taken care of between the manufacturer, between the FTO and the other partners will totally be empowered through a joint document that will be prepared for each of the stakeholders, and it will clearly elucidate the responsibilities, the rights, and it will be absolutely transparent to ensure that it is fair to each of the operator, the manufacturer, and the FTO. And finally, the benefit goes to the gentleman who's actually paying for the entire ecosystem, that is the candidate. So we have the entire thrust is upon having a trustworthy system which works on mutual benefits. It is not that singular benefits will accrue to any individuals. It's a complete cogent program, and that is why a lot of thought has been put into it.
Question is to Sakthi. Along with the aircraft, is there also anything with regards to the simulator for the aircraft? Along with the package, and then with respect to maintenance of the simulator also and all, is that
supply of simulator is definitely envisaged. We do have that available. There is a single simulator which is both the single engine and multi-engine simulator. The same simulator would work for it. Of course, whatever support is required for that will be provided as well. I think we'll wrap the session up. We've had a high energy day, high impactful day. Thank you, everyone.
Right, I request you to please give us the vote of thanks, Vibhuji.
I guess that's the vote of thanks. We'll let everyone break for tea. Thank you.
Thank you, and all the best to the Sakthi team. Please give our speakers a round of applause. I request all of you to please gather for a group photograph. Thank you all for
Thank Anisha for a humongous task that she's been putting together. And once again, I thank each and every person who spared their time, continued to sit through these sessions despite knowing that the traffics would be picking up and we would find it difficult to reach home. Well, we can entertain further. So thanks a ton to everyone. And especially a lot of thanks to Chairman Sakthi, CEO Vaibhav, Govind, and the entire team of Sakthi, Sharing, and the PR team, I-10 Media. My thanks and special thanks to our very special director for the Constitutional Club of India, who has been a wall of support for continuously to us. And may I request Shiring to please come and facilitate Director, Constitution Club of India, Shri Arvind ji. May I request the Chairman Shakti Group to please come up and present to Vaibhav and Chairman both.